What if I told you some of the rarest 60s Mustangs were never supposed to survive or even exist? Behind closed doors, Ford's engineers, rogue dealers, and mad racers cooked up forbidden prototypes, one-off drag beasts, and hidden street freaks that rewrote the rulebook before anyone could shred the evidence. In the 60s, the Mustang was meant to be a friendly pony car for the masses, but not every Mustang played nice. Some slipped off the assembly line with wild engines, oddball body styles, or secret parts never listed in any brochure. Most were crushed, lost, or buried for decades, but the few that survived prove one thing: the Mustang's rebellious spirit was born in the shadows. Today, we're digging up 10 forgotten Mustang variants so weird, so outlaw they shouldn't exist, but somehow do. Let's dive in. Top 1: 1966 Shelby GT350 Convertible Prototypes. When people think Shelby GT350, they picture snarling fastbacks howling around road courses, not a drop top meant for cruising the boulevard. But in 1966, Carroll Shelby quietly built 4 GT350 convertibles that defied every rule he set for his track monsters. These cars shouldn't exist, but they do, and they rewrote what a Shelby could be. By 66, the GT350 was already feared on SCCA circuits, lightweight, raw, and utterly uncompromising. But Shelby wanted to test if he could sell performance to customers who also craved open-air freedom. So his Venice crew pulled 4 K-Code Mustang convertibles straight off the San Jose line factory, high P289S 3-speed, and reinforced front. They didn't stop there. These mules were fitted with fiberglass hoods, functional scoops, racing stripes, and side-exit exhausts that barked louder than anything else in a beach parking lot. Inside, they got the same no-nonsense Shelby DNA: racing buckets, roll bar mounts, wood rim steering wheel, and that signature Cobra tack staring you down. Under the hood sat the 289 high-performance V8, underrated at 306 horsepower, but good for 0 to 60 in around 1/6 of a second. Not bad for a drop top that weighed more than its fastback twin. These convertibles were never meant for production. They were dealer demos and PR stunts, driven hard at local shows to gauge public reaction. But Shelby hated the idea of softening his image. By the time the experiment ended, only 4 ever escaped Venice. Most people thought they were myths, until survivors resurfaced decades later at auctions, selling for 7 figures as some of the rarest Shelbys ever built. But if you think a topless Shelby was wild, wait until you meet the Shorty, a factory-built Mustang that chopped the backseat, shrank the wheelbase, and disappeared into legend. Top 2: 1965 Mustang Shorty prototype. The Mustangs vanished because they failed. The Shorty vanished because it was too wild to survive. Imagine a Mustang chopped 16 inches shorter than stock, with no back seat and a fiberglass body so exotic it could pass for a European GT. The 1965 Mustang Shorty prototype was a radical 2-seater that Ford destroyed, but it refused to die. In late 1964, designer Vince Gardner pitched a daring idea. What if the Mustang wasn't just a sporty coupe for 4, but a true sporty car that could nip at Corvette's heels? Ford gave him one chance. Gardner took it out. Gardner took a 1965 production hardtop, sliced out the rear seat, chopped the wheelbase by over a foot. Its profile was stunning. A tight roofline, long hood, fastback rear glass, and a custom grille that looked ready to bite. Underneath sat the K-Code Hypo 289 V8, blueprinted to make around 300 horsepower. In a featherweight shell, the Shorty could rocket from 0 to 60 in about 6 seconds, a serious threat to any street Corvette. Inside, it felt like a European show car. Custom buckets, a sleek console, deep-set gauges, and bright red leather that screamed concept only. Ford loved the crowds at auto shows, but panicked that the Shorty would steal sales from their standard Mustang lineup. The order came down to crush it. Instead, Gardner hid it in a Detroit warehouse, where it stayed missing for decades, thought to be stolen forever. When the Shorty resurfaced, it stunned Mustang historians. Against all odds, the ultimate 2-seater Mustang survived. A one-off outlaw that proved the Mustang could have been so much more radical. But what if Ford didn't shrink a Mustang to make it wilder? What if they made one so stripped down, so cheap, it broke every rule of what a muscle car should be? Meet the economy Mustang. Top 3 in 1969 Mustang E Economy. When you think 60s Mustangs, you think fire-breathing V8s racing stripes and big block swagger. But what if I told you Ford once built a Mustang so mild, so penny-pinching, that it was an insult to everything the pony car stood for? Meet the 1969 Mustang E Economy. Mustang shouldn't have. By 1969, the Mustang was already a legend on the street, but rising insurance rates and gas prices scared Ford's bean counters. Their answer? A low-compression, underpowered Mustang meant to woo buyers with its promise of miles per gallon instead of miles per hour. On the surface, it looked like any other coupe, classic long hood, short deck, simple fastback lines. But under the hood was the real shock, a 250 cubic inch inline-six choked down to about 155 horsepower. No four-barrel carb, no rumble, just a Mustang 6 that sipped fuel at the cost of any real thrill. Inside, the Mustang E was basic as could be. Bench seat, no tack, 3-on-the-tree manual for some builds, and economy gauges that reminded you this wasn't a GT. 0 to 60? An embarrassing 13-14 seconds if you pushed it downhill with a tailwind. The idea backfired. Nobody wanted a fuel miser Mustang when you could still get a Mach 1 428 Cobra Jet right next to it on the showroom floor. The economy badge became a running joke. Owners ripped it off faster than they could pump gas. Most Mustang S either got junked, repowered with V8 swaps, or forgotten altogether. Today, finding one with its original 6-cylinder intact is like discovering a bad dream Ford wished to never greenlit. But if you think a gutless Mustang was a disgrace, wait till you see what Ford did when they cranked the power the other way. A factory drag monster so illegal, it got banned from racing altogether. Top 4, 1965 Mustang A/FX 427 SOHC drag car. A weapon so savage it had to be hidden in plain sight. The 1965 Mustang A/FX 427 SOHC drag car was a factory freak that shouldn't have existed. Yet it torched rulebooks and left the competition choking on tire smoke. In the mid-60s, the NHRA's A/FX factory experimental class was the Wild West. Ford, desperate to beat Chrysler's mighty Hemis, took a handful of humble Mustangs and turned them into quarter-mile monsters. Their secret sauce? The legendary 427 cubic inch SOHC cammer, a single overhead cam beast that made more than 600 horsepower when uncorked. These drag Mustangs looked simple from a distance: Wimbledon white or Caspian blue paint, skinny steel wheels up front, giant slicks out back. But get closer and you'd spot the acid-dipped body panels, fiberglass fenders, and plexiglass windows, all to cut weight. Inside, they were bare bones, just a single bucket seat, roll cage, a big tatch on the dash, and a fuel shutoff for when things got too wild. 0 to 60 was a joke. These cars lived an eighth mile at a time, routinely blasting down the strip in the low 10s, some even dipping into the 9s with the right gear and a brave driver. Ford never advertised these to the public. They were given to factory teams and match racers through backdoor deals. The NHRA tech inspectors hated them, other drivers feared them, and soon enough the rulebook was rewritten to ban the 427 SOHC from most classes altogether. Most of these camera Mustangs were raced hard, wrecked, or scrapped. Finding a real one today is like discovering a lost piece of Ford's outlaw history, proof that the Mustang could be a savage long before it became a suburban cruiser. But what if I told you there was an even lighter, sneakier A/FX Mustang that paved the way for the camera's terror? Top 5 1968 Mustang High Country Special, HCS. Tucked away in the thin air of the Rockies was a Mustang so regionally rare that most enthusiasts still don't know it ever existed. Meet the 1968 Mustang High Country Special, a dealer-exclusive snow-capped oddity that Ford built just for Colorado's wide-open roads. It shouldn't have existed, yet a few lucky buyers got the keys to a pony car no one else could buy. Back then, Ford's Denver sales district was looking for a way to move more Mustangs off local lots, so they greenlit a small run of about 251 High Country Specials for 1968, the final year of the HCS batch. On the surface, it looked like any other Mustang coupe or fastback. But a closer look revealed its secret weapons: unique paint colors like aspen gold, Tahoe turquoise, and sky blue, a special High Country Special badge on the fender, and dealer-specific trim bits like unique striping or special wheels, depending on the buyer's luck. Inside, most were typical 68 Mustang. Buckets, basic gauges, AM radios. But a few lucky ones got upgraded interiors borrowed from the GT or deluxe packages. Under the hood, nothing fancy. 289S, 302S, or the small block 200 inline 6, pushing out between 120 and 210 horsepower. It wasn't about speed, it was about local pride. Many owners didn't know they had something rare, Over the decades, these Mustangs got resprayed, rebadged, or simply scrapped, the special fender badges lost to time. Today, only a handful of documented high country specials survive, and they're finally getting the respect they deserve. At auction, a genuine HCS complete with its original paint code and emblems is a collector's golden goose, especially for Mustang fans hunting unique regional cars that shouldn't exist. But if you think Colorado's secret Mustang was weird, wait until you see the prototype Boss 322 that turned Ford's road course warrior into an underground drag strip menace. Top 6 1969 Mustang Must 32 Tonal Port Prototype. In the world of Trans Am racing, the Boss 3M2 became a legend for out-handling Camaros and screaming to the front of the pack. But few know that before the Boss 302 went mainstream, Ford secretly tested an experimental version with tunnel port heads so radical they made Chevy's Z/28 engineers sweat bullets. The 1969 Mustang Boss 300 tunnel port. Back in '68, Ford's racing division needed every edge to win SCCA Trans Am. The tunnel port design was borrowed from Ford's Nassau 302 program. Huge intake ports, straight-shot runners, and valves big enough to swallow small birds, all meant to boost high RPM breathing. The few Boss 302 pre-production mules were built with these wild heads, a high-rise aluminum intake, and special pistons to handle the compression. Mated to a 4-speed close-ratio gearbox and a 4-point faster Classic in the rear, these prototypes screamed past 17,000 RPM with ease. Outside, they looked like any other 1969 Boss 302 test car. No stripes yet, primer spots showing, magnums up front, and exhaust dumps just ahead of the rear axle for quick swaps on pit row. Inside, they were bare-bones racers. Black buckets, full roll bar, oil pressure and tack right where the driver could watch the carnage. Dyno Chic whispered about 400-plus horsepower at a time when the production Boss 302 was rated at just 290. The tunnel port was a monster on paper, but on the track, it was unreliable, prone to dropping valves and wearing out guides. The extra power came at the cost of engines blowing up mid-race. Ford canned the tunnel port idea just before full production. Most of these heads were scrapped or repurposed for race teams. Today, finding an original tunnel port Boss 312 test mule is nearly impossible. They're ghosts from Ford's racing laboratory. Ford didn't always experiment with raw speed. Sometimes they built something so pure and radical that it reimagined the Mustang from the ground up. Top 7 1962 Mustang I Concept. Before the Mustang was a pony car cruising high school parking lots, it was a radical mid-engine roadster that almost turned Ford into a sports car rebel. The 1962 Mustang I Concept was so ahead of its time and so far off the script that it shouldn't exist at all. In the early '60s, Ford was desperate to break free from its image as the conservative family car maker. Lee Iacocca and his inner circle wanted something that screamed youth and speed, a halo car that could compete with European roadsters. The answer was the Mustang I, a tiny, hand-built aluminum prototype with a futuristic wedge shape, open cockpit, and race-inspired side pots. The real shock wasn't just the shape. The Mustang I hid its 1.5-liter V4 engine behind the seats, making it a true mid-engine car years before Detroit even thought about that layout for the street. The lightweight chassis tipped the scales at just under 1,200 pounds, meaning its 109 horsepower could fling it from 0 to 60 in under 10 seconds. Inside, it was pure racer. Twin bucket seat, 4-point harnesses, and a wood-rimmed wheel that looked more at home in a Lotus than a Ford. It even ran laps around Watkins Glen during its debut, driven by Dan Gurney himself, shocking the crowd with its agility. But Ford's brass panicked. They realized that building a mid-engine two-seater would alienate families, and the dealers who wanted to sell thousands, not hundreds. The Mustang I was quietly shelved, its radical DNA tucked away. The Mustang name lived on, but transformed into the practical pony car that made history. The original Mustang I remains a museum piece, a ghost of what could have been if Ford had stuck to their rebel roots. But what happens when you take Mustang performance the other way, turning a tame drop-top into a forbidden hypo mule that Ford never put in the showroom? Top 8 1966 Mustang GT K-Code Hypo Convertible Mule. Ask any Mustang fan about the rarest hypo cars, and they'll list fastbacks and coupes. But they'll rarely mention a convertible. That's because in 1966, Ford quietly built a handful of GT K-Code convertible test mules that technically shouldn't have rolled out of the factory gates at all. By the mid-60s, The CACO 271 horsepower 289 Hi-Pow was Ford's pride and joy, a hottest small block you could buy in a Mustang. It turned lightweight fastbacks and coupes into street brawlers that embarrassed bigger engines. But the convertible? It was meant to be a cruiser, not a backroad fighter. Inside Ford's engineering department, though, a few engineers couldn't resist seeing how the Hi-Po would behave in a soft top. They quietly ordered a handful of San Jose-built GT convertibles with full K-code powertrains, solid lifter 289S 4-speeds, heavy-duty suspension, and factory dual exhaust. From the curb, these mules looked like any other drop-topped GT. Clean stripe-styled steel wheels, GT fog lights in the grille. Inside, they hid the real secret: special heavy-duty clutch pedals, rally pack tacks, and a reinforced underbody to handle the extra twist. Officially, the K-code convertible was never offered as a regular option. Dealers couldn't order one for a customer unless you knew a guy inside the plant or pulled strings through a performance-minded regional rep. Most of these mules were loaned to execs and engineers for testing, a convenient excuse for after-hours street racing. Most Hi-Po drop-tops were later sold as ordinary GTs. Today, finding one with matching numbers and paperwork is like finding a hidden Shelby. Few believe they're real until the VIN and build sheet do the talking. But if you think a stealth Hi-Po convertible was wild, wait until you see how Ford turned a regional dealer promo into a prototype that launched an entire West Coast legend, the California Special that shouldn't have been. Top 9 1968 Mustang Mustang California Special Prototype. The 1968 Mustang California Special was born as a secret prototype cooked up by West Coast dealers to fight the Camaro. But before the production GT/CS hit showrooms, a handful of pre-production mules hit the streets, and they shouldn't exist at all. California was Mustang country. Dealerships up and down the Pacific Coast begged Ford for a special edition pony that would stand out from the standard coupes rolling off Dearborn's line. The answer was a mass-up of leftover Shelby parts and unique styling tweaks. In 1968, Ford built a few California Special test mules at San Jose. Early GT/CS prototypes that wore fiberglass Shelby-style side scoops, a fiberglass deck lid with an integrated spoiler, sequential Shelby taillights from the 1965 Thunderbird, and blackout grills with fog lamps. Some even borrowed early Shelby GT rear quarter caps and unique GT/CS side stripes that changed style as the design evolved. Inside, they looked like regular Mustangs: bucket seat, wood-trim dash, basic AM radio, but under the hood, a few were optioned with small block 289S or early 300TS, the lightweight combo perfect for West Coast cruising. Unlike the official production run, these test mules were never meant for retail customers. They were driven by dealers, shown off at regional auto shows, and sometimes handed to car magazine editors for reviews. A few even ended up sold as regular GTs, when Ford's PR guys forgot to haul them back to the plant. Most of these prototypes were stripped for parts or repainted when the production GT/CS launched. Finding a real pre-production GT/CS is next to impossible. Hidden clues like non-standard Shelby parts and mismatched build sheets are all that remain. But if you think a regional promo turned prototype is rare, the next Mustang is pure ghost. A concept so secret it bridged the Mustang's wildest fantasy and the car that actually made it to the streets. The lost link known as the Mustang II Concept. Top 10 1963 Mustang II Concept. Before the world ever laid eyes on the production Mustang that would conquer America's highways, Ford secretly built a rolling testbed that bridged fantasy and reality. The 1963 Mustang II Concept was the missing link between the wild mid-engineered Mustang I and the showroom pony car we know today. With production so close to production, yet so radical, it nearly rewrote the story. After the Mustang wowed crowds with its race-inspired mid-engine setup, Ford knew the real money was in something more practical, but they didn't want to kill the dream entirely. Enter the Mustang II Concept, a fastback prototype that hinted at the styling cues of the first-generation Mustang, but with a flair that made it look like a mini Corvette mixed with European GT lines up. Its fiberglass body sat lower than any production Mustang. The roofline flowed into a sleek fastback. The side scoops teased future Shelby styling, and the nose wore a subtle chrome grille that looked almost Italian. Painted a pearlescent white with bold stripes, it was a showstopper at the 1963 Watkins Glen Grand Prix where it made its public debut. Inside it felt like a glimpse into the future. Bucket seat, a floor mount shifter, deep-set gauges, and a sporty dash. Under the hood, the concept car hit a prototype V8 borrowed from the Fairlane line, making roughly 260 horsepower, enough to push this lightweight mule from 0 to 60 in under 8 seconds. Though the Mustang II Concept looked production-ready, Ford worried its sporty lines were too aggressive for the mainstream buyer, so they softened the design, raised the roofline, and dialed back the European influence before final production. The original concept car never went to the crusher. It survives today as a museum piece, a ghost of what the Mustang could have been if Ford had leaned fully into its sports car DNA. In the end, the 1963 Mustang II Concept stands as the ultimate what-if, a fastback bridge between Ford's mid-engine dream and the legend that rolled onto Main Street. Thanks for riding with us through the secret side of Mustang history. Which forgotten variant blew your mind the most? Drop your favorite in the comments, and don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and fire up that notification bell so you never miss another hidden gem. This is Muscle Cars Revolution, where legends never die, they just get louder. See you on the next ride.